Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance Channel's Romance Roundup, the #1 romance book recs talk show. I am Liz Donatelli.
And I'm Libby Kay, author of the sweet romance series Buckeye Falls.
In celebration of Pride Month, Libby and I are chatting with Jess Everlee, author of sapphic Victorian historical romance, A Bluestocking's Guide to Decadence. And Jess, Libby, and I will share must-read LGBTQ+ romance book recs and our TBRs. Watch Romance Roundup on Reader Seeks Romance Channel and subscribe on YouTube. Listen to Romance Roundup on Podbean and all podcast apps. Viewers and listeners can email us at readerseeksromance@yahoo.com. And we have one announcement. Romance Roundup fans are invited to join our Zoom call-ins episode, which will record on Monday, June 17th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern. Libby and I would love to hear your romance book recs, romance book release news, and romance reading pleasures and peeves. Details are on Reader Seeks Romance on Instagram. Hello, Libby, and welcome, Jess.
Hey.
Hello.
Thank you for taking time to join us on Romance Roundup, Jess.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
The timing of this is perfect because I got the arc of your book at the Public Library Association conference back in April. And when Liz said you were joining the show, I'm like, oh my God, I already have the book, so this is perfect.
Yay, that's awesome.
Yes. Are you aware where your arcs are being distributed, Jess? Like, are you
No. Every once in a while, someone will send me a picture of it on a table at some kind of library conference or something, but I do not know really anything about it except for the ones I send out.
Interesting. I was curious because you walk up to each booth and it depends on how each publisher does it. But I was greedy and I'm just like, I need anything you have this romance. And so I took the whole stack and ran away.
Nice.
So you were in
reasonable.
that stack and I was very excited.
Yay.
So A Bluestocking's Guide to Decadence is book 3 in Lucky Lovers of London. The first in the series is The Gentleman's Book of Vices, followed by a rule book for Restless Rose. What's the overarching story or theme of your Lucky Lovers in London series?
So at the series level, Lucky Lovers of London is a series of queer Victorian era love stories. Obviously multiple pairings. So the first 2 books are gay couples, and then we have a lesbian couple in the 3rd book. And as the title sort of suggests of the series title, though Victorian England is sort of notoriously a hostile time for queer people and queer love, all of our characters sort of get lucky by the end and are able to have their happily ever after through some sort of social loopholes and things like that.
Can you share what A Bluestocking's Guide to Decadence is about?
Yes. So A Bluestocking's Guide to Decadence, it's a sort of opposites attract or a hate to love story between Jo, who is a decadent. So she and her husband, who they're not in love with each other. They have this sort of marriage of convenience going on. So they're sort of more like best friends with a contract, and they publish illegal pornography out of the back of their supposedly sort of respectable bookshop. And they tend to go to some crazy parties. Jo likes to go to both the Sapphic Society and the Gay Men's Club that you see in the first 2 books and just live sort of this decadent lifestyle. And then Emily is quite the opposite. She is a prim, buttoned up female doctor that's a rarity and sort of a cool thing, but she's also, as a result, she's just not that fun at parties, I like to say, but she works very hard and she's likable for these other reasons, but she is very much Jo's opposite. And when Jo's husband, who has his own lover on the side, his lover gets pregnant rather unexpectedly. And because of the sort of scandalous nature of this whole arrangement, she's having difficulty finding some medical care, and she's experiencing some difficulties with the pregnancy. And Jo feels like, oh no, he's going to divorce me. And so even though she's not in love with him, divorce in the Victorian era is sort of a very big deal. It's sort of this horrible legal proceeding that would leave her in sort of a lurch. So she wants to be very useful and make sure that they don't want to get rid of her. So she sort of acts like she has some midwifery experience to help with this, but she doesn't. And that sort of falls apart pretty fast. And then she needs some help. So she goes to the Curious Fox and talks to her friend Noah, who's in a rule book for Restless Rogues. And his sister, Emily, is the doctor. And so they meet each other this way. And through some different shenanigans with their friends and chosen family, and an epistolary element of having some letters that they pass back and forth, and some sort of clandestine meetings at the Sapphic Club in London, they fall in love and have sort of their relationship build.
You really hooked me and got like a anxiety moment with the introduction to Jo and her situation. I just with the pregnancy, and obviously they're not in love, her and her husband, but just like when I read that, I was like, oh my God, like I just had this like panic moment. So I have to say, like, as a writer, well done, because I had this like visceral reaction to what's going to happen to her. And obviously,
thanks.
It's a romance. I know it's going to work out, but I really had this moment of like, oh my God.
Right. Yeah. No, it really grabbed you.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. I was like, was this written on the back of the book? Like on the description? I didn't know this was going to happen. I was like, where is this going? You know? So immediately it was like, I've not read anything with this type of twist so early on, you know? So yeah, for sure. It was definitely set up a compelling story.
Mm-hmm.
Now you mentioned that Jo is in a kind of in a marriage arrangement, which is called a lavender marriage, which I know was a thing, or, you know, it might still be referred to as a thing, but back then lavender marriage was something that occurred. Which other parts of A Blue Stocking's Guide to Decadence are inspired by real life queer history?
I try to do as much as possible. I will say A Blue Stocking's Guide to Decadence probably has a little bit less than the previous two of things that are very specific, mostly because there is less information that I was able to access about sapphic experience and community than the gay aspect of it. There was a lot of differences in how those types of relationships were handled during that time period. So you can actually read a lot about women's love for one another. There's actually particularly something that was very interesting. Another female, like a real female doctor, after she passed away, her most likely female lover actually wrote a biography of her life, and you can you can feel all of that love in that biography. And it's really fascinating because since people didn't really put together, like they were very like, oh, they're like sisters. Like that was like a very Victorian vibe of like, they're such close friends. They just love each other so much. And like, you can get away with a lot of that in this particular time period. And so that was a really interesting document that was inspiring for this book in particular, especially having the female doctor aspect. There were female doctors in this time. This was something that surprised me. I didn't quite realize going in what was the extent of what was happening there. There was actually something, there wasn't like a ton, it wasn't super common, but there was a bit of a movement to get more female doctors into the field because of Victorian prudish morality. They did not like the idea that male doctors were sort of up in women patients' business. And so there was actually sort of this interesting thing, because in some capacity, it feels so like progressive and forward thinking, like, oh, we're going to get female doctors. But the reasoning is like, oh, we can't possibly have this immodesty. And so that was a super interesting thing that was true that I found, and that impacted a lot of Emily's character and ultimately a lot of the plot. I actually had to change some of the plot once I dug a little deeper into what was happening with female doctors at the time, particularly that they were mostly expected to minister to other women and to handle women's issues as doctors, because that was like the point of having them there.
This is a really good segue into a review, a positive review on Goodreads from a reader named Meg. And I would like to read this excerpt. It's both comforting and frustrating to read about the issues and choices a woman faces in her life set in the Victorian era and have them be relatable today. I'm getting a STEM PhD, and I still hear sentiments similar to what Emily would hear at the hospital. A quite timely and oddly cathartic read. I will, like our Emily, continue to pursue my passions and see where life takes me and make peace with my ghosts along the way. And then this reader goes into a review of of A Blue Stocking's Guide to Decadence. So how does that grab you? I don't know if you've read this.
Oh, that's so nice. That's very sweet.
This is a great argument, if you will, for the value of historical romance, is that you could see kind of where people were, where they are, how things haven't changed, what things still need to change. So I thought that was really well, illustrated by this review.
That's a wonderful one. I'm not in STEM, so that's really interesting to hear. Like I hear that sort of secondhand, but
Yeah.
Emily's character, I had to kind of step outside of myself for that aspect because that's not my thing. So that's really interesting to hear from somebody in that situation.
How much research do you do per book? I'm a history major before I became a librarian, and so for me, I used to get bogged down in the excitement of the research. Did that happen for you, where you almost have to like pull yourself back and be like, no, I'm writing a fiction story based on, true events?
Yeah, I'll get hung up on some little detail. It's not even really usually anything important, which is a problem because there's probably important things that I got all wrong because I'll be like, oh, I have this exact train station. Like Blue Stockings Guide, I spent all this time trying to figure out the train stations that Emily would be taking into London and what city she had to be living in so that it wasn't taking too long for her to visit London since she lives outside. She had to live outside the city, but couldn't be too far outside the city. So I just got all up in the train.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is going to be like a few lines.
I wondered about that
in the scheme.
I wondered about that because
Oh,
the way the logistics were all down. And I was like, first of all, it made you feel like, oh, I'm really in this time because all these details. But I was like, wow, Jess really went deep on this. Like, what did she have to do to figure it out?
I was surprised how quickly people could get from the suburbs to London and how fast letters could move at that time. I was really surprised. Like you could send a letter in this year, so it takes place in 1885.
Right.
If you were in London, you could send a letter to somebody else across the city. They'll get it the same day. It's like sending an email.
That doesn't even happen now.
No, I know. It's like sending an email. It's crazy. And I was so surprised they had such an efficient postal system. And then they were able to get, so from London to Surrey, I kind of looked up how long it takes to get these letters, and it wasn't very long. So that was actually very helpful for the plot. And with the train, you could get in and out of London in about an hour and a half, is at least what I found. So that was helpful for making sure that I could sort of make that timing work. Obviously, if it had taken place earlier, that might be a different story.
Jess, what made you pick the Victorian era over other time periods in British history? Was there something in particular about that time that fascinates you as a writer?
Actually, yes. So I when I started writing this, Gentleman's Book of Vices was actually my first romance, and I missed the memo that you were supposed to write Regency. Like I didn't realize that Regency was the bulk of historical romance. Like I'd read some, but I just hadn't put together that was the norm. And so I was like, well, I know the Victorian era better because I studied Victorian literature in college. So it was a lot of the classes that I took had me sort of steeped in that time period. And I had also done a little bit of research into turn of the century technology for another project. And so I picked Victorian because I love the vibe and because I already had at least some base knowledge of the time period. So I knew it would be a little bit easier than picking something else.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're a trendsetter.
That is why.
Because more and more people are kind of breaking free of the Regency, and I'm here for it. I like having the variety of it.
Yeah.
I think it was sort of less trendsetter, more well-timed. I'm not going to take credit for it. I feel like there was already some bubbling of like people being eager to maybe try some different things and maybe readers ready for some different things too. Yeah. So I think that was lucky timing on my part because I was kind of honestly a little embarrassingly clueless about what was going on when I wrote the book that I wrote.
In A Blue Stocking's Guide to Decadence, Emily and Joe spend time at a sapphic club, Miss Withers' Orchid and Pearl Society House. And I have to ask, is a spin-off series planned?
No, but maybe it should be. Good idea. I have not planned that one. I do have a short story that is available on, I think it's still available on harlequin.com. You don't have to pay for it or anything, but there is a story between Miss Withers and Margot Levine, are two side characters in Blue Stockings Guide, and they're together during Blue Stockings, but there is a little short holiday story that shows how they got together. If anyone's interested in a little more Orchid and Pearl, if that's still up there on their site.
Oh, nice.
Awesome.
So what are you working on now?
So I have sort of two things going on. There is going to be one more book in the Lucky Lovers of London series. There is a side character in the first two books, Warren the bartender, who's was just sort of floating. And like, I can't really finish. 3 books is so tidy, but it's like I can't finish the series without Warren having a book.
Yeah.
So Warren's going to get a book, and I'm editing that. I'm banging my head against the wall trying to edit that. Oh, it needs a pretty substantial amount of work, but I'm doing my best. And then I am working on a turn of the century mining town romance series next. So that has been a lot of fun. I'm real excited about that. It's not contracted or anything yet, so it's just kind of in the works, but that is what is next. So I'm crossing the pond. We're going to Montana this time.
Oh, I love it. So it kind of has like a Western-y vibe. That sounds fun.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So it's Western. It's not cowboys, but it's like dynamite and mines.
That sounds awesome.
Western.
We just recently, a few episodes ago,
I was going to say.
we couldn't stay away from the coal miner humor. We had all these coal miner humor jokes. You have to watch the episode or listen to it to understand. But we talked about only one coal mine.
Only one coal mine, and little Jimmy, the child with the little canary. It got real weird. We got slap happy.
We created little Jimmy because Libby over here doesn't like when there's kids in romances.
Usually, unless it's done well.
Unless it's done well. So we would talk about just, throw it a kid in a mine. Anyway, you have to really...
In context, it doesn't sound nearly as horrible as we
check it out.
Yeah. Will there be any kids in mines? Like, are they going to be like exposing any type of unsafe coal mining practices?
I don't know yet. I haven't quite figured out whether I'm prepared to go there.
Okay. All right. Well,
so it's a good question whether little Jimmy is going to be in the coal mine.
You have our permission to use little Jimmy.
Maybe do only one coal mine.
Could. I've got a real good only one bed. There's only one bed is part of this one because we got tiny little miner shacks. So
so only one miner shack.
Only one miner shack. There's only one bed in the miner shack. They used to I know I'm just getting down the nerdy rabbit hole. If they worked different shifts, miners actually would have one small house with one bed, and then they would rotate who's using the bed throughout the day based on the shifts.
Oh, interesting.
So maybe when they're rotating, someone gets double booked, and it's like,
it's just something waiting to happen. So
I like it.
I'm excited about that. I have not come across, although I've seen it a little bit more, U.S. Western, era, Western expansion. I guess would be what it would be part of. So I've seen a little bit more of it, but I've not read a whole lot.
So there's not a lot that I've seen. There's Beverly Jenkins is an obvious counterexample, a lot of US stuff for her, but I know there are some. I know a lot of them are inspirational, and I don't know if you have any recommendations. I've struggled to find queer historical westerns.
Not come across.
I would love if anyone can ever find me one that is a romance. I've heard a few that aren't romances necessarily, but which I need to go read up on.
So based on how you've named each book in Lucky Lovers series, the 4th book, can you tease what's that? Could we have a guide? We have a rule book. We have a book. So what's going to be the
It has
material?
a title. It just has a title. It just got a title just the other day because we were just racking our brains trying to figure out how to get a book of some kind in it, and we couldn't do it. It's called To Sketch a Scoundrel. It takes place in an art class, and we were not able to fit the sketchbook in, but it's implied.
Oh, definitely implied. I think that fits.
Yeah,
there'll be sketchbooks.
Yeah, I was wondering if it'd be like the dictionary of something, right?
Ooh, that one never came into our brainstorming, but no, it's To Sketch a Scoundrel. That is the title.
I like that title. That's a fabulous.
I do too.
System.
That's exciting. And that will be released in 2025.
2025, right now, tentatively July.
So, Jess, we obviously are celebrating Pride Month this month on the show. So we're highlighting different queer romances that we've either read or we're excited to read. So would you mind sharing, and again, you could have read it or it's something you're excited to read, but something that's on your TBR that you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners.
I'm looking forward to KJ Charles's got one coming out that I'm hoping to read soon, to read maybe early, which is The Duke at Hazard is coming out. So I'm excited about that one.
I like the cover. It's one of the fun illustrated covers.
I love the title.
Yeah, I know.
Interesting title.
I feel like that will appeal to more Gen Xers who grew up watching like Dukes of Hazzard.
Maybe. I like vaguely know what Dukes of Hazzard is, but I don't think I've ever seen it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, we used to watch it. Was that about are you a little too young for that, Libby?
I caught it was on reruns when I would watch the Brady Bunch after school when I was a kid. Like they'd line up. So
Libby, do you have any queer romance on your TBR or anything that you'd like to recommend?
I'm recommending In the Case of Heartbreak by Courtney K. This came out in July of last year from Kensington, and it's the second book in her Fern Falls series. And this one is a friends to lovers. It's sweet. There's a little bit of steam to it. I will go on record and say that this is the first courting book that's not a historical romance that I've read like ever. That's one of the plot points is these are two sweet cinnamon roll guys, and there's a lot of mutual pining, but they want to court each other. And that is something that I don't think we see enough of. And I am here to say we need more of that because it is just so thoughtful and romantic. And it was, and I know I always use the word angst, but it was low angst. Like there was something about it that was just so sweet and beautiful. We have Ben, who is a baker, and he is in a baking competition. And there's a lot of stuff going on with like family drama and his own mental health struggles. And then we have Adam, who is a musician and lives in the same small town. And so they get thrust together while Ben's grandmother is having her 80th birthday party, and shenanigans ensue. I won't give away anything else on that, but it was just a genuinely sweet story. I read it in a weekend. It was the perfect little enjoyable, sweet summer read. I cannot say enough good things about it. And again, courting was the theme. It wasn't just dating. It was proper, thoughtful courting. Yeah. And I think we need more of that. So Jess, if you don't mind writing another romance in your free time that has courting in it, I would really appreciate it.
Okay. I don't know if I've read that in a modern one. That's bumping that book up on my TBR because that's so interesting. Yeah. I don't think I realized that was the idea of that one. So
I didn't either because it wasn't on the back of the book. And then I'm
how fun.
It, I'm like, oh my God, why?
when you say courting, it has kind of an old-timey feel where they just take everything very slowly. And like, do they introduce families? Because, old-timey courtship families were brought in. Is like,
well, they were childhood friends, so they know each other's families. It's more, they are dating with the idea that this is forever. They are taking their time. Wow. They are taking it seriously. This isn't just a, fly by night. Let's see what happens. Just again, I'm using the word thoughtful because I felt like their interactions were like romantic, like truly romantic. Like obviously romance books have those moments, but there was just something. And I usually haven't read queer romance or otherwise where both characters are genuine cinnamon rolls. Like I just wanted to like hug them both and be like, oh, Ben and Adam, it's going to be okay. They were both just so sweet. And Courtney did a fantastic job of making these feel like real people that I was rooting for from the beginning. A different visceral reaction to your book, Jess, where I was like, oh my God. It was like, oh my God. Both great in different ways. So I loved it. It was so good. So that is my, I literally just finished it. So that was In the Case of Heartbreak by Courtney K. Cannot recommend enough right now.
Wow, very good. So I've added to my Pride Month TBR a gay hockey time travel romance. That's right. First of all, I'm a sucker for time travel. And to mix that with hockey, it's called Timeless by Declan Rhodes. And it was released this year, April 2024, so just a few months ago. And I'm like, how did I not come across this soon? I think I just put in gay time travel because I was just like, oh, I want to see how many of those I can find. Like, because I love time travel. I want to like expand the scope of my time travel, reading. The blurb on the book says, a shocking return to 1980 and the chance to make hockey history with a happily ever after romance. 1980 is the year. So I feel really old. I was 4 years old at the time in 1980. So it's like, oh, they're going back in time to 1980. So I think that's hilarious, first of all. And apparently this couple get to attend the Lake Placid Olympics.
I was just going to say, is this the
Yes.
miracle game?
Yes, as a kid, I remember hearing about it, but so a closeted gay professional hockey player, Dylan, finds a pair of vintage skates in an old locker that transports him to 1980, where he meets and falls in love with Nico, a minor league hockey player. So then it becomes the question of, do I change history? Do I stay with him? All that jazz. I am intrigued.
Yes.
By the whole, do you put on the vintage skates and then all of a sudden, ooh, now I'm, does he just touch the laces? I want to know the logistics of the time travel, conduit, how they do it. I also want to see how 1980 is portrayed. I want to see if it's accurate. And the other one on my TBR is TJ Alexander's Triple Sec. Have you heard about
that's on mine too. Yes.
Ditto.
That looks really, really cool.
Triple Sec is a sizzling polyamorous rom-com set in the glamorous world of high-end cocktail bars. And it actually just published June 4th, 2024 by Simon & Schuster imprint Atria Emily Bessler Books. Mel, a bartender who doesn't believe romantic love exists, begins dating BB, who is happily married and in an open marriage with Cade or Katie, Kade. As a relationship with BB develops, Mel also has chemistry with Cade, and, quote, as BB, Cade, and Mel explore their connections, Mel begins to think that real love might be more expansive than she ever thought possible. So I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Ooh. So I have read polyamorous erotic romances, and needless to say, it was a little light on story, and it was a lot more about the sexual chemistry and the sexual connection. But this seems to be more about the relationship building between these three people. So, I'm very curious to dig in. And we've read TJ Alexander.
I was just going to say, we've read some of their things, and I enjoy their writing, and I feel like, not that there's anything wrong with it just being the sex, but I feel like they're going to give us a story that has more bang for our buck.
Oh, that's kind of punny.
You just, oh, it was. I didn't even think of that.
It was kind of ironic too, because you were like, it's not just about the sex, but you're getting more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Oh boy. So Jess, Triple Sec is also on your list.
It is.
Anything else that you'd recommend for Pride Month? Any authors you want to just give a shout out to?
I just finished Nellie Wilson's Exhibited, which is a gay romance about a museum exhibit designer and a park ranger dude, and they are working together on this parky exhibit thing. And so that was a good one. That was a pretty interesting one. It's millennial for sure. So okay. If you didn't watch the Dukes of Hazzard, it might be a good it might be the right age. You might relate.
Interesting careers for the protagonists. I would love there to be a museum, anything with museums. Mm-hmm. Park ranger stuff is less interesting because I'm not really that big into the outdoors, even though I myself live in a forest. But I always wanted to work at a museum. I used to send resumes all the time for museums, and obviously I don't work at a museum, so my efforts were for naught. But I love, to know about museum work. I would love to see that become the new trend. You know how baking, event planning have had their day and they're still going strong. I would love to see more museum people.
Yeah.
I could see that because that gives you a lot of settings to work with. There's so many different kinds of museums.
Oh, yeah. Art, history. Ooh, it could be anything.
That's true. Yes. I love that. So let's get that going. I love it. And that's our roundup. It was a delight chatting with you, Jess. Thanks again for joining us on Romance Roundup.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Yay, it was so much
nice
fun.
To meet you.
It was nice to meet you. It was nice to see you again, Liz.
Yes. And I'm sure we'll see each other at the Columbus Book Festival. Are you going to be?
Yes, I will be there. I know we kind of passed ships in the night last time. So hopefully we can actually see each other there this time.
Yes, and Libby will
there. Yeah, I'll be there Sunday. So.
You'll be there too? Oh, cool. Yay. I'll be there. I've got 2 panels
Me
lined
too.
up. Yay!
Watch Romance Roundup on Reader Seeks Romance channel and subscribe on YouTube. Listen to Romance Roundup on Podbean and all podcast apps. Thanks for joining us, romance readers.
Happy reading, everyone.